sound. Yeah, so I'll be covering most of the training content, starting from DevOps and deep diving to Kubernetes. And this is the specialized training content confined across the ask from Suresh, from most of you, how this is gonna be designed, because every training content comes with a customization based on the demands and based on the target members, how and what they wanted to accomplish it, right? So training model, let me, so this is going to be our training model. We're going to focus each and every end-to-end architectural building blocks, methodologies of DevOps and Kubernetes. Okay, for now it named as a DevOps and Kubernetes, but Kubernetes is one of the orchestrator tool of container, which again fall under a DevOps process model. So under DevOps, when we jump into the process model and the training content, there are multiple pillars of DevOps, which probably most of you have heard about: CI/CD. Again, CI/CD or DevOps, these are as a theoretical names. When it comes to implementations, it starts with multiple pillars. When I say pillars, it starts with CI/CD, monitoring, security, containerizations, and the platform. So these are its pillars. Okay, so pillars together form a building, and the building is known as a DevOps, or you say continuous integration or continuous delivery. Yeah. So this is CI/CD is possibly how you promote a code from development to the production environment, passing through multiple success build process. Okay, but the story doesn't end there. It actually starts from there. So once you deploy a code to a production, and DevOps is the only person in an industry who is 100% accountable of managing the production facing environment. Most of you, if you are in already in DevOps field, are about to explore the area or opportunities going forward in this field. So I would say this is one of major in demand. At the same time, it brings you a lot of responsibility and accountability, right? That's why without accountability and without responsibility, there not gonna be a demand in the market, right? And why there is a demand? Because this is the only person, he or she gonna take care of the entire production facing environment. When we talk about developer only worry about code what it develops, right? But where this code is gotta deployed, what is the platform, how it's gonna deployed, right? When you are managing the entire infrastructure, like when you hit suppose www or www.google.com, right? So how is DNS getting resolved from your browser? When you hit that, how it goes to your CDN provider? From CDN provider, how it goes to your DNS, which is domain name server resolver? From domain name server, which name server it resolves? From name server, how it target your server, right? Either it is sitting on your own data center, it is sitting on your any public cloud like Azure, AWS, Google, or any of the private cloud. And then, so this is what the NetOps part of the DevOps. This is first layer. Second layer, I'm just covering few of the topics so you'll get the right understanding what is DevOps. Okay, we'll go through the content in a while, but this is just a focus about what exactly is a DevOps in not in a theoretical but in the practical way. These are the areas. First is a NetOps, right? How you are hitting Google and where server is getting landed. Okay, so now the request landed to your front end server. So the front end server, there it could be legitimate traffic, right? Probably one of you are hitting it. Probably it shouldn't be a legitimate traffic. It could be a attack like DDoS attack, web attack, right? From chatbot systems, from bot systems, right? How do you analyze that? Then it comes called a WAF layer, web security layer. Okay, so we put web servers or WAF layer on that landing servers, right? Then it goes to the next, and there you call the Nginx servers, which is built with a functionality to route your traffic with minimum TTL or faster time to load and requesting your traffic to your backend servers. Now your backend servers nowadays, okay, it is gonna mostly it is a microservice layer. So that microservice layer, why they are designing it first, it should be loosely coupled so that it can easily be deployed in a container system without any hard dependency, right? So if one component goes down, not to worry, the other should work, and it should be deployed in a certain way that it should auto heal itself without any manual intervention. So the auto healing called resilience model, okay, and then scale up automatically called flexibility. Suppose uh, taking example of let's take example of the US market. Okay, so throughout year, suppose it's a consistent shopping, but at the time of Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Christmas, the sales goes high directly by 50%, right? And if you are managing entire infrastructure by yourself manually by increasing on demand, decreasing on demand, you will just doing that sitting all the time, right? Plus you will not have a surety that the manual scaling which you are doing, it's gonna support your traffic or not. So there is a lot of analytics data which is behind working on auto flexibility of scaling your infrastructure, scaling down. If something goes wrong at any layer, which is front end layer, mid layer, back end layer, right? When I say this layer, it means front end layer is the web server, back end layer is the data persistence layer. It could be your Redis, it could be your Kafka, it could be your session manager, and the backend layer is your database. Anything goes wrong at any time, anywhere, you should build the infrastructure in a way that it should auto heal without any manual interruption and without any downtime as well. Right? That's called, and with the help of Kubernetes, right? Why this is bringing in demand. Now you'll realize how this is happening. Something can auto heal without any traffic disruption because you are doing a transaction. Suppose most of you shop in Amazon.com. You are shopping something. Backend, any server can go down. Your single channel of traffic should not broke, right? And that is the experience any company wanted to give to its customer. If suppose Netflix, whose entire infrastructure is hosted on Kubernetes cloud, Kubernetes and AWS cloud, what do you think? So many of users watching the stream data all the time, nobody is seeing a single buffering, keeping aside the local or the person's internet issues. There is not a buffering from the service provider. This is all is happening because of this standard and very powerful tool, okay, called Kubernetes. Okay, this is orchestrator tool. Docker is the engine where you are deploying your microservice architecture applications, right? And then once it is deployed, okay, you built multiple monitoring sets. Okay, one is called because being a DevOps, and when I say you are the people who are going to work in this area, and suppose you are managing the entire application which is deployed in production, what do you feel? There in a days you will get hundreds of alerts. Your server could be down, your logging system could be down, your application could be down. Somebody is attacking to your system. How are you resilient to this system? By making full help of SRE and monitoring systems. And there is major demand. Only if you go to Google, they will not call a DevOps engineer. They called SRE, Site Reliability Engineer, okay, whose first and foremost responsibility is to make operational 24 bar 7 without any downtime. So he will take example of end-to-end infrastructure and how he's making with the help of lot of tools. Again, in the monitoring, there are multiple set of tools which have been divided. One is called logging, which logs your application logs and your infrastructure log. Suppose application log, if there is any error, infrastructure log, something, my CPU, my disk uses, my RAM, right? Is it going high? If it is going high, it should auto alert or it should auto fire a script which should scale a new system into the current architecture, which will balance your high CPU ask, right? That's called just a logging. Called monitoring system like APM, application performance monitor. If you are hitting google.com or amazon.com, if your page is loading slow, how you should know first before it goes to a customer, right? So there is a multiple tool it's gonna help you out, right? Then it's called Kubernetes. Okay, Kubernetes is a volatile system where at I would say every second there are hundreds of pods. The pods is the component of or a object of a Kubernetes. We'll get to learn later, where dynamically it goes up, goes down, it kills itself at any time. Okay, but how do you get to know? Which if you need to debug it, right? So there is a monitoring tool for that. So just till not ends here. Now next major comes the security. Okay, whenever there is an attack, you wanted to host your system only on a specific region of a country. When you wanted to reduce the latency, okay, then there is a security layer and security monitoring systems like SEIM tools are there. Okay, I'm just talking about this. And then this is called after deployment. So this is very important part of DevOps. Okay. Next comes platform. Okay. And we talked about, okay, my application, my monitoring systems, but where exactly we are deploying this? Obviously, the data center has become an obsolete model. Nobody is asking nowadays that I want a data center, specifically in COVID situation. The ask of public cloud is gone high by 70%. Suppose one of you wanted to be entrepreneur and you wanted to host your website. Uh, and first thing you will do that first I'll host a website and then I'll open a store, right? Take example of Alibaba. If most of you have heard, he's founder of enhancing the business. He said, why do I open a physical store? Physical store requires lot of lands. It requires upfront money to buy infrastructure in terms of land, in terms of building the blocks, in terms of providing the networks, in terms of providing the rack space. Instead, I will just need two physical or dynamic servers to build my websites. Just a two server, an entire traffic I can handle with just two virtual servers. And what is the cost of that? Nothing. It hardly $100 a month. And how much you will build for extra store. So that is his thinking, and that's why Alibaba is affronting the entire market, right? Your Amazon, they don't have a physical store, right? Anywhere you go. So the physical store concepts is going away, right? People and now with the COVID situations, most of us is not even going to a local store. All of you are dependent on your mobile, your delivery apps, right? And that's why there is a huge demand of platforms where you're gonna host your applications, where you're gonna deploy your applications, right? Where you're gonna use as a service as a platform, right? All the tools, technologies, everything needs a physical or a virtual server to be deployed. Even the tools, forget about application, even the tools, the Jenkins, when we are talking about the Kubernetes, the monitoring systems, every server is required to be deployed. And that's where cloud is coming up very high in demand in these days. And AWS, as most of you know, is one of the market leaders. It is not because it is a known cloud. It is because when you deep dive into it, the kind of service and flexibility it provides. Okay. Now there are, since the time you deep dive, you'll get to know. Okay. Suppose now you guys are new to AWS. So you'll go, you will deploy, but there is a charge associated for every virtual server, or there are 100 plus service in AWS itself. We'll talk about when we will log into AWS console. So they have got AI service. You don't have to build your service. They have got Elastic, the logging applications. You don't have to deploy. They have got their own version control system, like code deployment. You don't have to deploy a server. They have got their own configuration management tool. You don't have to deploy. You just go and grab it. But everything comes with a cost. So how effectively you are using this resource, how effectively you are monitoring the cost associated with your services running on AWS is very much important, right? And that is where the intermediate level of expertise is required. Okay, how are you effectively deploying and managing your applications on AWS? Because AWS is very smart. It is not only charging you based on your application deployed on a server or running per hour. It is also, there are many servers who is charging you based on every input output operations like S3. where you are storing your content. Either it could be static content, your images which you load when you go to Amazon.com. There are a lot of images getting loaded, right? Where it comes from? It comes from a static servers. But every time you hit, Amazon gonna charge to the owner of that AWS account. So they charge based on IOPS plus number of storage, both. So it is very important that when you deep dive into your career into DevOps, take it seriously. Okay, that's why there is a demand in the market, right? Why you think there is a demand in the market? Why you think they are giving so much of money to a single because that person is not only taking care of the infrastructure, it is not taking care of your complex upgrade, deployment, monitoring of your application. It also takes care of entire cost effectiveness. And that is where business is. Whenever you go to a company, when you explain technicalities of any project, he is not going to worry about it. He will just say how much money saving by deploying this application. That's the business owner. That is the data you're going to present, the metrics. About DevOps and Kubernetes. I know it is pretty elaborated, but it is very important to understand what is, the use of DevOps in the market. Okay, so this is just a nomenclature called DevOps, but there is a lot of aspects associated in the DevOps area, right? So before I'll deep dive into the content, until now, any of you have any questions? Or Suresh, are we covering questions at the end of the session? Do you want me to cover first the content? How you'd like to go, guys?
I mean, if any high priority questions, probably we can go ahead, or else we can go with the Q&A section at the end.
Sure, sure.
Yep.
So,
Any questions
anyone
from
has any questions?
participants? I guess you can
Okay,
unmute.
seems like
Yeah. Okay.
I
So
I'm
don't
good.
if you
wait
have any
a second.
questions, probably you can put it in a message. That's also fine. Kumar will continue with the session. Yep.
Yes, you have a chat. You can put that in the chat window if you have any. Let me continue that. So we're gonna cover in detail the prerequisite of that. So don't worry about it. If few of you are not familiar about Linux, because entire our session is designed on Linux and Unix system. None of specifically on DevOps when you are managing infrastructure, there is no Windows in place at all. Okay, Windows is only used by end users, like when you wanted to do a shopping. But and the backend servers, your entire infrastructure is deployed on Linux machines. Okay, and how the familiar commands. So we're gonna get into it, but good. We're gonna provide you some learning links. I think Suresh might have already provided you. So it is good if you go do a exercise, at least know how to open an editor, how to delete a line, a text, how to search for a particular string, how to concatenate it, right? So this will further speed up the entire exercise, right? Because that will be very hard to hop into every individual server and fix this mistakes like line mistakes or misprint, right? Because most of you are new to those Linux editor, which comes default with the system, right? It's good if you do a exercise like Vim editor, Nano, right? So VI editor, I would say, learn more about VI editor. We'll give I think Suresh, did you already share few of the videos and the links to the members, or it is about to get shared after this demo?
It's about to get shared. For a couple of
Okay,
members, I have
right.
already shared. For rest of the members, I'm about to share.
Okay, great. I think system requirement, you just need a laptop. I think most of our exercises is gonna get happened onto virtual machine. Have to worry about on your local laptop. You just need a laptop to connect which machine we're gonna host on AWS. Every one of you gonna have the account because it is very important. Cover entire lab on AWS. That is itself in a demand. There it itself is a different course on AWS, but the basic coverage we are covering, that how to create a virtual machines, how to control security groups, how to see what is running on that server, likewise. Okay, so you just need a laptop with the admin permission. Okay, let's jump into the DevOps big picture, what all the things we are covering. So what is DevOps? I think few we have already talked about it. Why DevOps? You already know the importance of it. Now we just talked about it. DevOps and performance. We're gonna talk about it in the content cover. The culture or technology. So it covers DevOps as a culture, as a technology, most of the tools in place. We're gonna cover about it. When it comes to business, few things that DevOps can further extend to save a lot of money. Plus, it gives a flexibility to scale up your environment only based on demand. It means whenever there is a requirement, I'm dynamically going to scale my infrastructure. And if there is no demand or no network traffic, it's going to scale down. So that is infrastructure related saving. When you are going to an intermediate or advanced level of DevOps, then you will get to know how further you go and save the money. Okay, there are a lot of tools. AWS itself provide a lot of analytics tools where you analyze that you have deployed your application on the server, whereas the server usage is hardly 20%. So you can further terminate this instance and launch a lower cost instance, which will fulfill your request plus further this dollar amount per month, right? So this is very effective. Now DevOps tool, the entire building blocks, what we're gonna cover in the DevOps tools. So these are the tools, okay? So these are the tools which we're gonna cover in the CI/CD model. Source control system, where most of you gonna develop a code, right? Entire infrastructure like AWS, how do you think we are maintaining it? We are maintaining with the help of code, okay? These are like Terraform codes, Packer codes, which are cloud agnostic, right? Few of them are cloud agnostic, few of them are independent, right? So Terraform is one which is independent of the cloud. It supports most of the cloud in the market like Azure, Google, and as there are platform cloud providers which they self provide infrastructure management tool, right? So we're going to talk about it now. GitHub is the place where we store and share the code or the source code to rest of the developers, and it gives us a flexibility of dynamically maintaining the code. What does it mean? And distributed system, it is a distributed version control system. We'll talk about more in detail. What is distributor? Distributive process means at any time two developers or hundred of developers can do a change in the single file without having, file locking, without having a locking file. Initially, if most of you are using clear case, so when you are working on a file system, you have to lock the file so other developer cannot work in that file. But with the help of distributive version control system, which is major in demand, GitHub, Bitbucket, Stash, these are the example. Most of the industries is using it. Almost 100% of industry nowadays are moving to either Bitbucket, Stash, Bitbucket, or GitHub, right? So because this provides this flexibility of no matter which reason, what time, where are you, you can still collaborate on the single file at the same time. Plus, it is more powerful tool because it is provides multiple integrations with lot of other tools, right? We now next tools we gonna cover under this, which is called Jenkins in CI, which is called continuous integration. What is continuous integration? So continuous integration. So DevOps is split into CI/CD. So CI is called continuous integration. CD is called continuous delivery or continuous deployment. In CI, we mostly talk about how code is developed and built. Okay, suppose a developer, if one of you are a developer, you should only worry about developing your code, nothing else. Rest entire headache will be taken care by a DevOps member. So he will give you a plan. He will give you, a DevOps member will give you an automated framework where I am suppose one of you are developer, you develop a code, and that's it. You worry about it. It should whenever it automatically goes to your version control system. From the version control system, it automatically triggers Jenkins. Jenkins is one of the CI tool. Okay, what it does, it takes the code from a source control system, it downloads on an intermediate server where it will build the code. What does it mean by building? Suppose you are using Java, you are using Python, you are using Node.js, you are using C Sharp, right? So every code has got its own build tool. What is build tool? Build tool is a tool which converts the any language to a machine language format, right? So Java is a format, but what machine understand? Machine understand only ML language, okay, machine level language. So that is the build tool does for Java, right? For .NET, we use a lot of tools. For Java, most of you, if you are having Java experience, so you know Gradle and Maven. So these are the tool. They comes with a dynamic configurations. So code will download from the source control. Automatically you will build a pipeline where this code will get built and it will generate a buildable artifact, okay, which you deployed in your system. Okay, what do you think? What is CLI? If you are working on most of the Linux machine, so on Windows machine, if you most of you are using machine called MSI. So MSI, I think you download anything called any format, you get .msi format or CLI format, right? What all these? These are the converted format of your application where you can't access the source code, right? It is these are executable format of the code, and that is where the build tool helps to convert this, right? So with the help of Jenkins, and this is the global CI tool, okay? It is called very powerful orchestrator tool. It supports multiple language there in the industry, plus multiple integration there in the industry. So it can be integrated to your source control. It can integrate to your build tools. It can integrate to your code analysis tool. I'm going to talk about it. It can integrate with your artifact storage. It can integrate with your configuration management tool. Jenkins can integrate with your AWS. It can integrate with your monitoring system, right? Can you see how much powerful it is? So why it's called orchestrator? Because it orchestrate multiple system with a single at a single place. So if you are a manager or you are uh, having a role of DevOps engineer or SRE, you don't have to go for every build by looking into what is failed where. No, you just be on a single console. Any error happening, this process, or anywhere which is integrated to Jenkins, you're gonna see a error log at one place. You can take an action from that place. That's why it is called orchestrator tool, and this is very powerful tool. Okay, so this is entire. We are not only covering of creating an entire applications and deploying it. We also gonna see how Jenkins server itself is set up. That is the beauty of this course, because so there are two roles. One, most of you, if you go to DevOps engineer, so either you'll get a role of using this tools as a service or managing these tools. Okay, managing these tools, it means you will take a ownership of deploying this server on the cloud. Deploying is not a matter. Where exactly it matters, let me tell you. Maintaining the HA, higher availability. What if the server itself goes down? There are thousands of application which is getting deployed every second. There are 100 plus project members who is dependent on Jenkins. How you gonna quickly take it up, right? Even though server crashed. So that's called higher availability model. Having multiple servers taking their backup on the background all the time. So it doesn't matter if one server goes down of Jenkins, two server goes down of the Jenkins. The end user for DevOps member, your project members are the end users. Those are your customers. They should not be impacted. The thumb rule. Okay. Next, the integrated with the SCM tool. We're gonna talk about this. Why it is a more integration, creating a multiple jobs. So in Jenkins we called jobs. So source control is a job integrating with the source control where it will download the code, integrating with a build tool, like for Java it's a Gradle. Take example. Okay, so where for npm, right, these are a few of the tools. So it's gonna integrate with that, the artifact storage, the monitoring tools, the AWS platform. This is called how Jenkins can integrate. So we set up a job. So whenever a developer deploys a code, Jenkins will take care automatically of downloading the code, building it, Suppose it will build the code and generate a jar file. Most of you know Java has a jar file, right? It's artifact. Then it will upload this with a proper naming conventions to the artifact. Because in a day there are hundreds of developers building their code. How do you know which developer has built what? Plus, you have to deploy in multiple environment in a manageable format. And when I say multiple environment, it's called development environment, it's called testing environment, then called performance environment or regression test environment, a pre-production environment, and a production environment. So you can see a chain, and every propagation of your artifact. Suppose you have deployed in dev. If it dev passed, then you deploy to test. Then in every test pipeline, there are multiple new set of jobs, like lot of test suits, right? Then if it is success, then you deploy to your performance environment, or you pre-production environment, where you don't gonna do performance related test like network analysis, load test, right? And then if that pass, you're gonna deploy it to the production, plus in a certain way where it is not gonna impact your traffic, right? So that's why there's a lot of things to learn. So that's called Jenkins, okay? And that's why next it comes code analysis tool. So code analysis, there are a lot of tools, okay? This is just a name, okay? There are a lot of tools. I'm going to talk about the lot of tools, how exactly it looks like in the market, right? So what is code analysis tool? So developer develops a tool. How do you ensure that they are developing a quality code and they are pushing the quality code to a production? Because we are a DevOps engineer, we are not gonna, and we are supporting Python, Node.js, Ruby. We are not the expert in all the language, and we couldn't be. Nobody can, right? So that's why there is a lot of tools in the market, and that's why the DevOps engineer power comes in, right? He keeps searching what's there in the market. What is the latest tool based on the my project requirement? What tool fit best based on the demand, and then you pick it up, integrate in your plug and play environment. Jenkins provide your plug and play environment. You don't like a tool, okay, take out. Get me a new one. It will give you two more new features. Done. Tomorrow you don't like this, take it out, bring a new tool. Just plug and play device, right? How do you plug your TVs? Just if you don't want to the socket, remove it, plug a new one, right? And then just like that, source control is a tool which automatically scans the tool. It gives you a rating. Is it a redundant code? Is it your code is getting duplicated? There are a 900 set of rules in this tool, okay? And this is integrated in Jenkins. So Jenkins itself will fail if it does not pass a criteria, minimum criteria, like your code quality should be 80%, 70%. That you will set based on the discussion with your developer. Then artifact storage, just what I said, right? In terms of when you are building a tool, it generates an artifact based on the language of the programming language where your code is being developed. It generates an artifact. It could be jar file, war file, CLI file, your MSI file, your npm packages, anything, your library files, where you're gonna store, right? You're gonna store it in artifacts. So there are a lot of artifacts in the market. We're gonna talk about Nexus, which is very famous, and rank one. We're gonna only cover the rank one and rank two tools in the market. There is already a list. There's kind of pie chart list which we're going to talk about, right? Then next comes a configuration management system, okay? So we're going to cover Ansible in detail. This is a very powerful and in demand tool. Chef and Ansible is the two tool you must have heard. So what is configuration management? So configuration management is a tool which brings a server to a desired state, right? Suppose is all of you know Nginx server? Yes, no? Okay, so suppose it is a web server, or suppose you need a server to have a service running all the time. What if a manual person logged into a, so suppose you are managing 10 servers, and your primary task that in that 10 server, your Nginx server, which is a web service, okay, it is running in all the 10 servers. How do you manage? Is it every day you're gonna come to your office, or you whenever you wanna hop into your laptop, you're gonna log into 10 servers? No. What if one person gone and stopped the service manually, or it has, or he or she has mistakenly or unknowingly did a change in the configuration files? How do you get to know? Forget about you get to know what is the action you're going to take. Then if it is a 10 servers, for example, in the real world there are hundreds of servers. How are you going to take care of that? That's why there are a more powerful tool called configuration management system. It has comes with a feature called idempotent features. Okay, what is idempotent features? It keeps scanning your 100 servers. If it sees that in one of the server, if one file is not in the desired state as you have described, suppose a configuration, suppose a service is being stopped, it is not in the target state, it out of 100 server it will only rerun to make out of 100 server, the one server which is faulty or which is not in sync, it will only run Ansible and make system to back to the target state, right? So that's called idempotent feature. It's not gonna run everything on that entire 100 server, right? How suppose if you are installing Java in one of the server, right? And tomorrow you have to install new version of Java, just a basic requirement. Okay, very basic because your entire application is deployed in 10 servers. Now developer have asked you, give me a newer version of Java. How do you gonna take care of this? In that, few of them are existing servers. They might have also asked, give me a new servers. Now what you'll do? You don't have to manually go to the existing server, uninstall, download it, install it. If something goes wrong, how do you get notified? Every day you come to your job, you have to make sure this Java is on the same version. Everything can be easily taken care with your fingertip with the help of this configuration management tool. You run it once and it will keep running it. It will make sure all the 10 servers, 15 servers are on the targeted version of Java. If not, it will automatically download, it will run, it will make sure it is having the desired state of the desired version of the Java. Okay. Then likewise, there are a lot of tools that's called configuration management tool, right? Next comes AWS. We mostly talked about it, AWS, right? This is where entire infrastructure is sitting. Your network layer is sitting, your application, where it is gonna deploy it, what are type of servers you are deploying. It is called front end servers, your database, your session management layer, your WAF layer, right? Lot of applications, right? Linux command, let's talk about. Then it comes containerizations, right? Containerizations. Now, just an example, let me give you. So, if you need to deploy a server, what you will do? First thing, what you will do? Can anyone? Suppose you are one of you are a developer and you need to deploy your application. What you will do? So, you will go to your infrastructure team. You will ask me, hey, give me a server. I need to deploy it. But do you know what is the configuration of the server? Okay, let me also take that requirement that you are lucky, you are very much know what is the requirement of your application, like what exactly your application CPU need, your RAM need, your disk space need. Based on that, you'll ask me a server. But your application at any time one application can run on one server. But what if the server goes down due to infrastructure issues, due to network issues, or due to suppose any natural calamity? Suppose a flood happens, then what you will ask next time your infrastructure guy, hey, give me two servers, but these two servers need to sit in a different region of the country, which is very hard, right? What even the region itself having a natural disaster, then you will ask, give me a two countries, you right? And that's how this public cloud gonna help you out. Okay, and so you ask two servers, but you are deploying with 1:1 mapping. Okay, one server can only run one application at the moment because it does not provide isolation. Okay, now so you are consuming your entire interest one server just for one application, right? What if you need to run in the same server multiple applications, same version of application, suppose two servers, three servers on the same server, two variant of application? You can't do that because the same server cannot provide you two different isolated environment. That is something which is achieved with the help of containers. Okay, so containers is a very powerful tool which can gives you isolated environment in a single system. Now in a single system, I can deploy 10 variants or 10 different versions of my applications, Like I can deploy my, in the same server, I can deploy my front end to two variant of my front end, two variant of my back end, right? So at any time, I'm running four servers in a single server, actually, to frankly speaking, because with the help of containerization. So this is what, can you see how much cost it is saving? I don't have to tell you, right? So running 1:1 and running 1:4, it is directly means you are saving 3x cost, because now in one server you are running four application. Previously you used to run one server, one application. So extra server cost, which is 3x you are saving, directly bringing this technology in your server. You just need to install a containerization engine and you are all set. It just gives you a dynamic and isolated environment where you can deploy either same application or a different version of the same application on the single server. That's called containerization. But this is again a complex technology. Then how do you manage this containerization in terms of deployment, in terms of monitoring, in terms of multiple objects of containerization? There exactly it comes called Kubernetes. So Kubernetes again a very powerful tool. Okay. So Kubernetes, if you see, so Kubernetes, it is called orchestrator of container. Okay. So this entire life cycle of container, Docker is just one container engine. There is Rocket, right? There are multiple container engines. The famous one is Docker, which you might have heard. But all this requires a maintainer. So the famous one is called Kubernetes. Okay. Kubernetes is an orchestrator, and most of the cloud provider is also providing Kubernetes themselves, like AWS provide EKS, Elastic Kubernetes Service, Azure provide AKS, Azure Kubernetes Service, Google provide GKS, called Google Kubernetes Service, where you just need to grab the service and start using the application. But again, it is a very complex, I would say, for specifically for the ones who is not into a system for 6 months, right? Because there are multiple components of Kubernetes and your Docker itself to understand. And these is where the topics comes, which will help you getting the complete insight into Kubernetes, right? Which talks about scheduling. What do you mean by scheduling? How you gonna schedule your pods, daemon sets? These are called objects. Okay, in Kubernetes world, every component is known as objects. We'll talk about this. Okay, so how do you schedule? Scheduling is one component of Kubernetes where you schedule the objects. So pod is something where you deploy your application. Daemon set is a object where you want to make sure every nodes, it means you create a cluster, like 3 server cluster, but every cluster you have to make sure one monitoring server run at any time without you do further. If something goes wrong, another one monitoring system comes at the single instance. Tomorrow you want to bring a new server into the same cluster. By default, the monitoring server will come automatically into that new node, right? So that's called daemon sets. Okay. Then there's a lot of things called resource limit. You can further provide resource limit, multiple schedulers. Likewise, the monitoring, very much important. How you gonna monitor the deployed components or multiple objects in the Kubernetes, entire life cycle of the objects, multiple objects, which is deployed under the Kubernetes, entire cluster maintenance. So till here it was just an object, but Kubernetes itself, it has got master. It is divided into master and worker. Master is a one who maintains your entire cluster. Most of the time, you will only dealing with your worker service, like schedulers, kube systems, right? Cluster is something, cluster maintenance is where you're going to talk about the services which will help you to maintain your cluster up all the time, right? So how do you understand the Kubernetes cluster? How do you upgrade? Every month, AWS releases a new cluster version. So without disrupting your traffic, how do you do a complex upgrade without having a single transaction failure? Very important nowadays in industry to learn this. Okay. And they are struggling to make their applications to upgrade to the latest version without having a downtime. Till date, what I have seen, still there is no clarity about how to upgrade it. Right? There is a process, but still they won't be able to opt it. It is just because of lack of interest, lack of exploration, right? And the lack of interest. And next is implement backup and restore methodologies, because without this, how do you support your upgrades if something goes wrong, right? You need to roll back to the previous version, to the previous working state, right? So this is where these are all very important to understand. Next, the security. Since now you are managing one child is fair enough, okay? But how about if you have a 10 childs or 10 childrens, right? So it is really difficult. Who is doing what? All children comes with their own brain. Every brain works in a different direction, right? If one you can control it, how about 10? So that is very hard and very complex to maintain and monitor it. That's where the security aspects comes. There's a lot, not even security and monitoring aspects comes. So security is where you will configure how your object will receive a traffic, and based on authorization and authentication, how do you grant that particular object to do what kind of task, okay? And plus lot of certification associated to it, and the other aspects of key value store, it is the features of it. Following what storage, how in Kubernetes we store the key value pairs, the sensitive data in terms of secrets, how do you encrypt and decrypt dynamically while running your applications, like likewise. Then troubleshooting, obviously, this is very important aspect. If something goes wrong, how do you quickly troubleshoot it? You have to log into multiple objects. There are multiple processes to hop into your different objects and do the set of troubleshootings, the default set of troubleshootings. Then the core concepts, followed by the networking, which is very important in Kubernetes, how your traffic flows between multiple objects, right? And then followed by, we will set an entire cluster by ourselves on our local system, on your local laptop. Okay. In our laptop itself, we deploy uh, entire cluster, 3 node, 4 node cluster. So your local laptop will work as 3 laptop or 4 laptop, right? So entire cluster will deploy in your own laptop, and that is very important from interview perspective. That most of without you know how to set up a cluster, because if you go to AWS, somebody, when I talk about EKS, AKS, or GKS, so they already hosted your entire cluster. So you'll not get the clarity of what is exactly the master component, master services, right? How do you maintain it until unless you don't set up by your own. This is where you're gonna set in your own laptop, and that is very important from your interview expect. I think 30% of the interviews is going to cover when you set up the entire Kubernetes cluster by your own. There's a lot of interesting components is sitting there, right? I think this is just frequently asked questions. Why should you go for a Kubernetes training? Adapting Kubernetes, the job scope, the Kubernetes survey and research. I think you have already explored, and that's why you have opted a DevOps and Kubernetes. So you have already done the market analysis, what is on and most in demand. Okay. But at the end, my scope to cover and get the outcomes from this training is have a clear understanding of DevOps and Kubernetes architecture and its building blocks. So most and all participant should understand at the end of this training all the components of Kubernetes and DevOps. Be able to confidently deploy applications either on AWS with DevOps standards like DevOps toolset on Kubernetes cluster. That is what you need, right? Know the best practice of application development, because we are building the CI/CD model. We are also writing a lot of codes to maintain infrastructure, to deploy application on AWS, to write YAML files for multiple objects of Kubernetes. So we ourselves are becoming a developer on the DevOps side. Okay. Then installing a Kubernetes cluster in a highly available mode on cloud and on premise both. And at the end, we are ready to give any interviews on either on the CI/CD, DevOps, or Kubernetes framework. So we'll be covering most of generalized question being asked on CI/CD, DevOps, and Kubernetes in terms of entire topic which is being covered. So idea is to cover almost 80 to 90% of interview asked questions, right? Because I heard from Suresh, most of you are planning to attend interviews, or few of you are planning to attend interviews, and that is where, when you are going, you have to be full confident, okay? Because you have to be smart enough though. If something you don't know, you should know how to tackle it. Nobody, as an interviewer, every day I take 3 or 4 interviews, including Sunday. That is the first start of my day, and for multiple organization across regions, right? I do not expect a person to have 100% on all these area. If I'm asking a question as Jenkins, okay, if he's able to answer 50 or 60% close to a solution, he is all set. He or she is all set. On Kubernetes, there are a lot of objects, so nobody is champion. But what interviewer expect that how much interested candidate is, how much energetic the candidate is, and how much does he know at least 50 or 60% of that topic. So that's why the major aim to cover the entire component of DevOps and Kubernetes, and then gives you 50 or 60% of coverage so that you can go and appear it. Later, once you jump into a project, you can always have the hands-on session based on the project you guys are working on, right? I think it is already. I think, oh shit, I've already covered an hour. So yeah, with that, I'll just stop it here and give you guys some time to have any questions. Yeah, over to you guys. Hope this gives you
Kumar
some
Satish
clarity
here.
though. Yeah.
Kumar Satish here. I
Yes,
just
Dish.
have a basic question.
Yeah.
So we will be covering AWS, Azure, right? Including this DevOps. And I just wanted to know, like, if we are okay, if we just practice some Linux commands, or do we need any Python script or shell scripting kind of thing, or basic Linux commands is okay for this course?
Okay. So a couple of things you asked. First thing, we are covering AWS, not Azure, because there are a lot of public providers. Covering one in platform specific itself gonna take one entire session, because entire our lab has been designed on AWS, which is major in demand. Next,
Okay.
the Linux command, you don't have to worry, because when you see, this is very vast topic. Okay, an entire set of topic is gonna covered on your Linux machine. So at the end, by default, you're gonna come as an intermediate expert on the Linux command set. But before the session start, I would definitely recommend. I have already given some prerequisite to Suresh to comes at least basic, like when you say editor, right? How to open a file, how to write into the file, because it is not like your Windows notepad, right? It defaults gives you a lot of shortcut, and if you know the shortcut from the notepad, it gives you 10x flexibility to save your time and to be a faster developer, right? So if you can, there are a lot of labs available open in the market, right? I've already given to the series, but it will hardly take 2 or 3 days, not more than that. Okay, if you just practice 30 minutes every day from now to the next appearance, that is enough, not more than that. Did that cover your ask?
Yes. And what about like Python? Do we need any Python scripting?
We don't need to learn Python, but most of the tool, like when you say Ansible here, Ansible is entirely developed on Python. End to end, this is a tool itself developed on Python. So when we are working, we are obviously writing the playbooks. We are getting to know the JSON result in the Python format. When you say Kubernetes, so there are a lot of objects or small application we are gonna deploy based on the Python. So you don't need to know the Python as a hardcore developer, but yes, how Python works, how can you develop a small Python application, how can you run it, the Python scripts. So that is a part of the course. Those comes by default.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for that, Kumar.
Yeah, yeah, sorry. So yeah, I was giving my whole spiel here, and I don't think so you heard any bit of it. But uh, just the crux of it is, do we really need?
Mhm.
I mean, are organizations still looking into spinning up individual Kubernetes cluster environment, or are they
Mhm.
going for more managed services like AWS Fargate? That
Mhm.
was number one. And the other thing I wanted to check was, are you going to cover anything with relation to Terraform to spin up, not just deploy code, but also spin up services like something like CloudFormation scripts or something? Yeah.
Okay. So let's tackle one by one question. Okay. So if you see the course content, okay, starting from Kubernetes here. So scheduling, logging, application, cluster maintenance, security, storage, troubleshooting, core concept, networking. Till here is not even a master plane, okay, which is called setting up your Kubernetes cluster. Any services you use, no matter public or managed services, this is where these services you still need for managing your applications. So you get a service, suppose AWS provide EKS. So you created a cluster. So cluster means it's a three node cluster or four node cluster like EC2 machines or virtual machines. Now what you will do? Now how you'll deploy your applications, where and all you will manage your variable files. For that, you need a scheduler, which you need to still deploy. You need to deploy your entire objects, right? Where you deploy daemon sets, you deploy pods, you deploy, how do you deploy variables? You deploy variables in the form of secrets, okay? Which is in the format of mounted volumes, which is non-sensitive data, and in terms of secrets, which is called sensitive data, like your backend database connection strings. How do you store in encrypted way, right? Then troubleshootings, then networking, how your front end pod will be able to connect to your backend pod, even though both are sitting in the same server, but you can further restrict the navigations. Then setting up the monitoring aspect. Third, the HPA, which is called horizontal pod scaling. So these are objects which we are covering from when you say the topic called scheduling, logging, applications, security, storage, core concepts of whole Kubernetes API, right? The networking, and very last, this is very important. Like most of us industry still are not using EKS, AKS, and GKS. Why? Because they are 5x costlier than hosting your own Kubernetes cluster. So almost 40% of demand in the industry. Suppose you are not into a major company who can bear the infrastructure cost like anything. If they are small or startups, they are still need a developer, and there exactly the huge demand comes. So that you will manage the entire cluster. So you become a cluster administrator, or just from a Kubernetes DevOps guy, you can become the entire. So in CK or Kubernetes world, there are two professionals required, and there are two level of certifications also there. One is called Kubernetes administrator, and second is called Kubernetes developer. Okay, what we designed in our course, so that we will cover both as a Kubernetes developer and as a Kubernetes administrator. So whereas administrator, this topic is going to consume the entire 2 sessions, okay, which will talk about the setting up the entire clusters, maintaining in the highly available way. Something goes wrong, how do you roll back? Maintaining the entire certificates, okay, and likewise other services. So that's why we are covering both, answering your questions. But in demand, market in demand, it depends which organization you are joining and are they willing to pay 5x cost based on the managed services, or they wanted to host it. It's all depend on the industry demand. So we can't rely only by learning. And if any of you are appearing, don't rely that, and don't assume that you're gonna use a hosted service. Even though in the hosted service, 80% concept you have to know, but you can't leave the 20%, which is important. This is very important, I would say. And the third question is regarding Terraform. So Terraform I have not mentioned because we can include that part. Terraform is an IAC code, which is called infrastructure as a code, right? Where it is required to manage your entire infrastructure. In AWS, again, everything is a black box, guys, right? AWS gives you a platform, but how you gonna create your VPC? How you gonna create your subnets? How you gonna create your route tables? How you gonna create your gateways? How you gonna create your other layer like EC2 instances, Redis, Kafka, databases? Everything is nowadays is managed via code. Nobody is going to console, because now you are into DevOps area. Forget about any consoling of the tool. Everything works from your APIs based call or CLI. Okay, so from CLI, you're gonna make a API call which gonna do the task in the background of your hosted applications, right? So Terraform is a tool which is supporting multiple cloud providers, like it supports even your VMs, right? It supports your Azure, Google, Pivotal, your Azure, right? So you can manage this entire infrastructure using code. We can cover that if required. At least not, we can touch upon that. At least how to create an instance, because there's a lot things to cover. But there is never an ending story, right? There are a lot of tools in the market, which specifically on the DevOps area.
Correct. Correct. Thank you, Kumar. Yep.
Okay, who's next?
Hi Kumar, this is Ravi.
Hey, Ravi.
Hey, it's a wonderful session, Kumar. So it was crystal clear to me. I mean, whatever you have explained, it's crystal clear. So we have, I mean, it's not in high priority or something. I'm coming from a QA background, so just wanted to understand, since DevOps is nothing. I understand that it's a kind of generally people work in a silo role, not like in other teams which we have in a group of people working in a agile teams. Second thing is, how far the networking or infrastructure concepts should we know? I mean, when coming into a DevOps role, and how much the coding concept or the coding that we need to understand and we need to work on the DevOps. And what are the, I know that the DevOps engineer or the DevOps administrator, I know these are the two roles that we have. So what is, what are the roles that we generally we have in a DevOps? I mean, it could be, just wanted to know. I mean, how the path will
So,
be, how it.
no, good. I think starting your journey in a DevOps, I'm into a DevOps area from almost 8 years. The time the word came in the market and attending the conference across the world, I'm the open source communicator across most of Ansible, AWS, a lot of tools which I'm gonna talk about during the sessions. You will see a lot of my published and a blogs page. Okay, so specifically starting your career in DevOps, don't think that you're gonna take this role or that role. Every day the role gonna change and it's gonna be dynamic in nature. Okay, the day one you might get into an industry which will say I don't have any DevOps tool. First a month you will concentrate on deploying the tools, okay, which is the CI/CD tools, where you're going to deploy Jenkins, you're going to deploy code analysis tool, artifact tools, right? Your monitoring tools on the cloud. So your role has become infrastructure or a admin or administrator of this tool. Now, a month when it is deployed, the second month you will start a developer role, DevOps developer role, or we called SRE role, or you call just a DevOps role, where you're gonna sit with the engineer, you're gonna interact with them in terms of, hey, how are you building your code? What is the execution flow of your model, right? And then you build a pipeline. Okay, the pipeline something like the entire CI/CD model. That now I'm going to provide you this framework, this pipeline process, that based on these tools which you have already hosted, you're going to grab the service, you're going to develop a framework which will help developer to automatically build the code, deploy a code, and give the output directly at that particular developer without he or she going to any other console. He just develop a code, push it to the source control system, and within certain minutes, he gonna get the output that this is what it is deployed in the dev environment. Is he what he wanted, or he has to work on the enhancement of the feature? Anything, is it a success code, failure code, whatever developer has deployed. So your next month, your role will change. Now, suppose your next month you have set up a framework. Third month, you will work on entirely SRE part called Site Reliability Engineer part, where now your application is going to a production. How are you setting up the entire monitoring and security layer, right? Now that is completed. Now your role will change into performance or optimizer role, where you're gonna monitor how much cost you are making for your company, right? For putting this infrastructure, is it really effective infrastructure, or you gonna rethink reducing the cost by bringing other tools or a service will consume the less resources? So I'm just giving you the example. So now you can analyze, right, how the role is switching month by month. It is not a static role in a DevOps area where you're gonna say, hey, I'm gonna work on an administrator for my entire life. No, it's gonna change based on where are you at this moment. If the industries is not knowing DevOps, if they are setting up, you are administrator for a few months, then you are DevOps developer for next month, then you are SRE for end of month, then you are monitoring and logging engineer, then you are security engineers, right? Then you are performance engineer or cost optimizer engineer. So your role is keep changing, and that's why the DevOps brings you the interest that this is where it is a very vast area to learn and explore. You're getting me, right?
Yes, yes. Yeah, Kumar.
And nowadays there are a lot of AI and ML analytics is coming in DevOps, which probably at the end, if the time permits, we're gonna cover. When we talked about the performance optimizer, the cost optimizer, right? So a lot of public cloud providers are providing this service, which you can mark into your tool, which can tell you, hey, with this infrastructure, this is your cost. And this is the process where you can further save this amount of dollar, entirely based on the analytics data.
Okay. So Kumar, one more question is coming to the Kubernetes part. Are you going to give us the complete, the training on the with respect to AWS only, or it would be to Kubernetes will covering about the Azure and GCP, or maybe, sorry, GCP as well. So how is it like? Or maybe a question,
Yes.
my question may be wrong.
No, that's fine. That's a good question. So again, I would say our platform is gonna be AWS. Okay, in the AWS, we're gonna deploy. If you see here, we're gonna take care of the managing our own cluster. So when we manage our own cluster, it means we are deploying by our own. It doesn't matter. Underlying, you are using cloud, you are using your laptop, you are using your Google Cloud, GKE, doesn't matter. So whatever hardware you bring, we gonna deploy the cluster by ourselves. And on top of
Okay.
it, since I'm also gonna give you the overview about how GKE, Azure, or AKS, or AWS called EKS is providing this service, right? Because you are not gonna use those service because that comes with a paid variant. Okay, yeah, every account you're
Okay.
gonna create, it comes with the free tier account, right? But I have I'm paying certain amount of cost, so I'm gonna show you how the EKS service can be used to create a cluster, right? But none of you is required to do that because it's a very high charge every hour when you run the EKS cluster. But you will know what is that, because once you know this, right, you will automatically know that this is something which is already gonna taken care by using the providers. But it is just a cluster. Rest 80% you still have to manage by your own.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
What else, guys?
Uh,
Any more questions?
I guess Aparna.
By one, right? So that would best fit, I would say, in this group, right? Yeah, that's it. Was any next questions? Okay, if not, I have just pinged a periodic table of DevOps tool in the chat. All of you can click on that. Okay, this is published by Zebia Labs. Okay, and this is keep varying it based on if you are attending lot of events like KubeCon events, which is organized by Kubernetes, or all reasons are taking inputs of tools who is using what, or in the industry, what is the majority of industries using this tool. These are open source tool and these are licensed tool, group of all. So if you see, if you just mouse over in the cloud, you'll see AWS in the topmost list. After that is a Azure. After that is a Google. It's just like chemistry pie chart. Okay. Same like if you just click on containers, you will see the lot of DevOps in the topmost tool. if you click on deployment tools, if you click on any other release management tool, you will see the lot of something automatically organized in this order. The first, which is in the order, like when I talked about containers, right? Can you see which is on the top? The Docker is on the top, right? So we are covering Docker. So in the container, there are a lot of tools. The Docker container is there. The Rocket is there. As you see, there are a lot of tools in every methodologies. So this is very hard to cover each and every tool, but we make sure we cover the first and second rank tool, which is globally opted by the industry. So this is, I think I've just been, you can explore yourself. And the idea is when you say to Git, right? Can you see the top-notch tool, the GitHub, the Git Lab, SCM. So this is a paid variation of the Microsoft, but this is also based on Git. So we are covering Git and GitHub, right? I talked about Bitbucket, right? So this is what, guys, all about. So you can explore this pie chart. So it is always organized based on demand and how industries are using it. So that's it pretty much. Coming back, I did not introduce myself. So I'm working with Suresh from a couple of years from now, and it's been always interactive sessions. I think for most of the sessions, we have received 100 out of 100 feedback, positive feedback. I am mostly working as a consultant, freelancers, working, going to multiple organizations, seeing their as it's set up, provide consultancy, how to optimize, how to enhance, how to give the security expect on their existing model. Plus, if the industry seeks on basic building blocks, if they don't have any DevOps, any Kubernetes clusters, any model of SecOps, NetOps, DevOps, BIOps. So that is the main area which I'm covering across multiple industries by giving them all consultant models. And if required, I myself build the entire infrastructure from scratch, the entire framework, the automations when we talk about Jenkins, Kubernetes, cloud development, your SCM development, your Python web app development, and AWS certifications, Kubernetes certifications, Terraform certifications. I'm itself certified on all these tools. So I would like to try my best to give the content-based knowledge, which is mostly on hands-on. Theoretical, I see that 10 to 15%, which I'll be covering rest. I'm giving you all the reference documents, which the only reference documents which you can target to achieve the required information. There are a lot of dumps when you do Google, but there are only few which can give you right content in a shorter time, right? Because Google is a big house, right? You can die out your time exploring a single. If you wanted to learn about AWS, there are thousands of courses or there are thousands of Wikipedias, right? So which one you are targeting? So there are all reference links we are covering. So at your own convenient time, you can cover that. However, most of the hands-on technical based interview questions is what the target of this session to cover it, that I'll be trying to cover it up. But it's again goes with to and fro conversations. So I would like all you guys to come back, interact during the sessions, do your